I think you're just about ready. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here, and I imagine that we're being joined by many people online as well. One of the central functions of a rabbi is to be a teacher, and so we invite Rabbi Helfand to offer us some words of Torah, and we'll have an opportunity for some back and forth. We'll ask questions here. Either Karen or I will facilitate with a microphone to come around and give you a chance to ask questions. And we'll just have a nice casual conversation for maybe less than an hour. By 2 o'clock we should be done. So thank you. With that, I'm going to invite Rabbi Helfand.
Cool. Thank you, Rabbi Grunwald. I might leave this on, take this. I don't know what the rules are.
Either one. Jeff will figure out.
Okay, I'm going to move this back a little bit. I'm going to keep my mask on since we're fairly close to each other, if that's okay with all of you.
If you want to be able to move around, just relax.
I have the thing. Yeah, I got the thing. Rabbi Grunwald, you're right that one of the functions of being a rabbi is also teaching, but it's also learning. So hopefully together we'll learn a little bit together, and we can guide each other on the path of us learning together. But before we do the actual learning, and Laura will hand out the source sheets in just a couple of minutes, want to offer an opportunity if anybody wants to dedicate your learning to anybody. I think it's always important that we learn with people in mind for healing, for anybody who needs a little love in the world, anybody who needs dedication or anything, that we'll just take a moment to think about who we want to dedicate our learning to together, and then we will recite the bracha for learning Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Praise your God, King of the universe, who's given us this beautiful commandment of going swimming in your sea of Torah and immersing ourselves in this Torah. So I want to start with a question. And I'm going to move around just a little bit so that I can see you all. And then when you have something to say, you want to share, just say your name so I can get to know your names. And I'll repeat it aloud for those people who are watching virtually. What's one lesson that you've learned over time that you want to make sure gets passed down to a future generation? Right? What's something that was really important, foundational for you that you've gained in your life that you want to make sure people know going forward? Think about it for a second. Could be something you learned from a parent, something you learned from a rabbi, from a teacher, from the School of Hard Knocks, if anybody is enrolled there, in my last year. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll take a couple of people. Just tell me your name. Meryl. Oh, you're fine. No, you're great.
I would say how important Shabbat is.
How important Shabbat is. Beautiful. Great. Anybody else? Something you've learned that you want to make sure people know in the future? Yeah, please. Morty. Easier said than done, right? Be a mensch, but beautiful. Yeah, great. Please. Jonathan says, easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life. Wow. Whew. I got to write these down. Anybody else? We'll take one or two more. Yeah.
Always have a plan B.
I don't have a plan B. Lorraine says always have a plan B, and I hope plan A will work, so. Yeah, great. Anybody else will take one more. Yeah, Michael. Okay, so Michael says that he learned from his dad, always
understand people different because you are who you are.
Okay.
Because of where you were.
You are who you are because of who you were when, where you were when. Wow. All beautiful ideas. If I've learned one thing in rabbinical school, and I'll have Rabbi Grunwald and Laura hand out the sheets in just one second. If I've learned one thing in rabbinical school in life, it is that we each have something that we can carry with us that is important to share. And so in a moment, you're going to get the source sheets. They're going to come around now. You're welcome to, I don't know how many other copies there are, but you can either share with somebody or there's enough for everybody to have one. And there's a beautiful line taken from Rabbi Lawrence Kushner's book, God was in this place and I did not know. He's riffing on the scene when Jacob and the angel get into conflict, and Jacob says, I didn't realize God was here, right? How was I supposed to know? And for those of you who are joining us virtually, I'll read it aloud so that you can follow along. And I'll wait till the sheets are passed out. And I know when we give sheets to people, it's an urge to resist to flip over. So that's why I wrote kindly, please don't turn over, resist the urge, please, with a smiley face. So just bear with me for just a few minutes. Stay on the front side, and then I promise we'll flip over, okay? God was in this place, and I did not know. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner writes the following. Each person has a Torah, unique to that person, his or her innermost teaching. Some seem to know their Torahs very early in life and speak and sing them in a myriad of ways. Others spend their whole lives stammering, shaping and rehearsing them. Some are long and some are short. Some are intricate and poetic. Others are only a few words, and still, others can only be spoken through gesture and example. But every soul has a Torah. To hear another say Torah is a precious gift. For each soul, by the time of his or her final hour, the Torah is complete, the teaching done. We each have something that we carry with us, that we want to remember, that we want to pass forward from one generation to the next. Right? The opportunity for us to say that this is uniquely me. I'm made in the image of God, and I carry with me this particular thing. But it also says to us that it's not always easy to know what it is that we carry with us. So I want to invite you just for 2 minutes with the person sitting next to you, and if you're watching virtually, if there's someone with you next to you, you can answer some of the questions that I provided as a navigator. What is the Torah that you hold dear to you? What is the Torah that guides you in your life? What do you want to take with you in the future? How can you let yourself be guided by the broken vessels of your life? And what does your heart say to you in times of need? Think about it. Talk about it with someone sitting next to you. If there's someone who's sitting by themselves, I'm happy to come and sit with you for a couple of minutes. We'll take 2 or 3 minutes to have this conversation. You can join in triads and quadruplets and other myriads of however many partners you want. It doesn't matter to me. And we're going to take a minute or two. We're going to go through whatever question speaks to you or whatever comes from your heart. Based on what Rabbi Kushner has written, again, try not to flip over the page yet, okay? Go for it. Okay. So take another 30 seconds to wrap up your conversations. I hope that you got something nice out of this. Okay, so we're going to bring it back. You should feel free to continue this conversation, elsewhere after we finish. Take it home. Oh, you want to? In a minute, I promise we're going to flip the page in a second. If you're willing and comfortable, if anybody would like to share a couple of their observations that they shared, that they heard, if you're comfortable to do so. If anybody has anything they want to say. If not, it's totally fine as well. Please, Olivia.
Some of us have our Torah very clearly to express, and some of us were struggling to articulate that idea, even in our little group. So that's not specific to these questions.
No, so Olivia says that some people have their Torah figured out, and they can clearly articulate what it is. Some people struggle to figure out what their Torah is. And I think that that's real. And I think that that's part of life, is that we have lessons that we know. Don't stick the fork into the outlet, right? I never did it, but I can only imagine what would have happened, right? Others of us, we're still trying to figure it out. We are growing. We are human beings, and we are continuing to grow, right? Beautiful. Anybody else? There's a step there. I want to, yeah. Great. The Torah that you carry with you is what your parents instilled in you, are the positive things that you should carry and move forward and live your life. Beautiful. Thank you. Maybe one more? Yeah, please. Amazing. So what was said was, what does your heart say to you in a time of need? That it's both a moment of recognition that these are the blessings in my life, but also at moments where I struggle, that these are the struggles of my life, and that I can name them. To actually put your finger on something to the point where you can say, this is what's bothering me, right? Or this is why I'm excited. Whatever it might be, to actually name something is a really challenging, but also really beautiful thing. I want to say, Torah is what I'm hearing from all of you can be interpreted in so many different ways. It's not just the scrolls that are in this beautiful ark behind me. It's not just the chumashim that are in the seats in front of you. Torah at its roots, Torah at its purest form, is guidance. It's teaching. Those of you who speak a little Hebrew, you might hear another word that sounds familiar to Torah, and that is moreh or morah, a teacher. Torah is our guide. Torah is our playbook. It is our landscape and our blueprints for how we live our lives. And what's beautiful about Torah is that we each have our own Torah. For some people, it might be the Torah of our parents. Be a mensch, always hold the door, etc., etc. Some of us, it might be the stone chumash Torah that we read on Shabbat. But whatever it is ours, and we are allowed to have it. And that's what's so beautiful about Torah. It's chaim hi l'machazikim ba. It's a tree of life for those who will hold on to it. Hold it. Love it. Hug it. Wrestle and fight with it. That's the beauty of Torah. So now the moment you've all been waiting for. We're going to flip it over. I know, right? Woohoo! And I'm going to share with you the blessing that I carry with me from my beloved teacher, Danny Siegel. Anybody know Danny Siegel? The mitzvah man himself? If you don't know Danny Siegel is a prolific author, poet, thinker, and he's known for his incredible dedication to the world of tzedakah. He writes the following. It's called A Blessing. May your eyes sparkle with the light of Torah, and your ears hear the music of its words. May the space between each letter of the scrolls bring warmth and comfort to your soul. May the syllables draw holiness from your heart, and may this holiness be gentle and soothing to you and all of God's creatures. May your study be passionate and meanings bear more meanings until life itself arrays itself to you as a dazzling wedding feast. And may your conversations, even of the commonplace, be a blessing to all who listen to your words and see the Torah glowing on your face. Shabbat shalom.
Oh,
All right, now's the fun time.
yeah.
We ready?
Yasher koach, Rabbi Helfand. Thank you for your lovely words of Torah. The generic term for clergy in Hebrew is klei kodesh, being an instrument of the sacred, an instrument of holiness. And Rabbi Helfand, you're clearly a klei kodesh, an instrument for bringing Torah and God's wisdom to people, and we look forward to getting to know you this weekend. And so this is now our opportunity for folks to ask questions. I'll come around with the microphone, and so that you can ask questions and be heard by the folks at home if you're comfortable using the mic. So yeah, we'll start with John.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
My name is John Schwartzberg. You asked for a softball, so here it is. Ready? Favorite Torah commentator, either historical or contemporary?
Oh my goodness. That's not a softball. What? That's so hard. How can I choose one? Oh my God, okay.
Well, my bad.
No. My favorite Torah commentator. I used to think that there was only one answer, and that was Rashi. And Rashi and I used to not get along, and now I like Rashi a lot. So Rashi is definitely on the list. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory is on the list. He's one of my rabbis. And recently I've been getting into Nechama Leibovitz of blessed memory, who does the work, who makes Rashi's life easier for us to understand. Because Nechama Leibovitz of blessed memory, a master teacher who taught a lot of your teachers. So those are three really important ones. And then the modern day is the people I get to learn with. Those are the people who I learn my Torah from as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I guess it was salt. I don't know. That's a great question. Thank you.
Vicinity right now? Okay, we'll bring this over.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Shelley Lazier.
Shelley, you said?
Shelley, yeah. Okay. What do you love about being a rabbi?
What do I love about being a rabbi? Can you ask me on May 17th? Because I get ordained on the 16th, so I'll be able to answer that. No. What do I love? I love this. I love having conversations with people, getting to know their stories, hearing from them, interacting with them, holding people, not physically, but holding people together and being with them at the greatest moments of pure joy and the moments of real chaos or struggle or grief. It's being with people. That's one thing I love about being a rabbi. The other is what I got to do this morning. I got to travel through time here in the main sanctuary, meditating and stretching in the house, hanging out with preschoolers, sitting on the ground for Tat Shabbat, coming back into the sanctuary, going to be with the religious school students in that age, is really, my days are full with life and with the circle of life in age in particular. And the food's great. And being a rabbi means I get to eat Jewish food, and that's great, you know? So those are a few of the things that I like. But ask me on May 17th. My
You have a
answer,
very lovely-
my answer might differ once I actually have a rabbi.
You have a very lovely wisdom about you now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you take off your mask?
You can if you want to.
I'll tell you what. Is it okay? Okay. You're welcome.
Jonathan DeFez. So we have two minions here at the HEA, and so this is a two-part question. What challenges and opportunities do you see in a shul that has two minions? And also just a general take on traditional. I know you haven't had a chance to see Shir Kadash, but your general take on these two different styles of minion.
Great. I love the fact that a community can have multiple services. It's really a really true treasure. And so I actually think that's a really beautiful thing. It's more people than the other one might feel left out. If one gets more participation from a clergy person, then the other people feel left out. And that's a balance for sure. And I think the blessing of having multiple services is that you can experience your Judaism the way you want. Just like we talked about that everybody has their own Torah, everybody has their own Judaism as well. And some of it might be sitting in front of the sanctuary in the incredible arc that I have to strain my neck to look up to the top. I really don't hope that anybody goes up to a ladder to carry those things down. But really, they don't use a cherry picker or something? They use a ladder? Oh my.
High holidays, they all turn white.
I hope you all save Gomel afterwards for a successful retrieval of the Torahs. Anyways, I think that there's room for that, to have the traditional sanctuary service and then to also have other things. And it's a balance. I don't think there's a right answer to how to do that. But it's also important to know that there are people who connect in different ways and connect to their Judaism in their own way. And that might be through chanting and meditation and singing, and that might be through traditional Torah reading and a sermon and whatnot. So it's actually, I think, a really beautiful challenge to have as a community, to be able to say we have multiple services and to say that we're able to accommodate those people and their needs, but also to make sure that we're thinking holistically as a community about what our needs are. And I think it's a great opportunity for partnership. That is to say that people who aren't really sure where they want to be, well, try both and create a partnership. I want to be in the synagogue, in the sanctuary for the traditional Torah reading. But then for the davening pieces, I want to go and I want to chant and I want to nigun and I want to, text study or whatever. So I think the partnership there is a really important piece as well. But I don't have a great answer because I don't know your community well enough. And since I didn't get to see it in action in the same ways that I've heard about, it's hard for me to answer. Sure. Sorry. But thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Excuse me.
Leslie Alger,
Okay, Leslie.
and thank you for this teaching. So I'd like to ask you a couple questions. One, what is your Torah? And second of all, if you look 10 years down the road, what would you like to be known for as a rabbi?
Wow. Okay. So what is my Torah? And 10 years from now, what do I want to be known as a rabbi in a rabbi? Okay. I have many Torahs. I wear many hats and many kippot. One piece of Torah that sticks with me, that I take with me, is the true belief that we are all created b'tselem Elohim, that we are all created in the image of God. And therefore, Leslie, right now I'm talking to God, because you, I believe, are created in the image of God. Each of you, I believe, is that. And so when I engage in a conversation, when I look at somebody, I see godliness in them. And part of what I do as a rabbi is to help people see the godliness that exists within them. And it's hard for a lot of people. People struggle with that. So that's important for me. And that's a piece of Torah that I carry with me very much so. In 10 years from now, God willing, I want people to know that I care about them and that I care about people, that I strive to be a community builder, that I'm a lover of Torah. I'm a ben Torah, I'm a son of Torah. I'm also a father, a husband, a brother, an uncle, a son, and David.
Beautiful, thank you.
So again, you can ask me in 10 years also. Oh, thank you. Here. Yeah.
Looking
We
for...
went from 75 degrees to 30,
Yes.
and the sniffles come with it.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm Tammy.
Okay, I'll repeat your question. Is that okay?
Yes.
Great. Tammy's going to ask a question.
I wanted to know what is important to you about the button that you're wearing today.
Thank you for asking. Tammy wants to know what's important to me about the button that I'm wearing. My button says, which I got from your synagogue here in the main office, my pronouns are he, him, and his. It's in my email. It's on my resume. It's important for me to share that I am an ally and to also make sure people are comfortable and respectful of who I am, and I would do the same of them. So the pronouns 10 years ago, I would not have even thought twice. I've learned from my classmates, in particular in rabbinical school, about the importance of who our identity is, and that we each have what is ours. And so if you want me to call you Tammy, I will call you Tammy. If you want me to refer to you as he, him, she, they, whatever it is, then you deserve the kavod, the respect of that. And so for me, it's important to people to know that I am an ally and I stand with people of all walks of life, of all orientations, of all backgrounds and makeups, and I value them as a human being with dignity and respect. And again, I believe, going back to Leslie's question, that they are created in the image of God. So it's important for me to people know that, and that I can be supportive of anybody. And I've learned those real, true, deep lessons from my classmates at school. So thank you. Yes, Lorraine.
Outside of Torah and
Sure. My hobbies and my interests outside of the rabbinate. I'm a big sports fan. Sports fan, in case that wasn't already clear from some of the other things people have already said. Watching, playing, going. Not very good at most sports, but I went to a Jewish day school, so I was fine. I love cooking. I love hiking. I love being outdoors. Rebecca and I love to read. I'm learning how to play board games. Slightly begrudgingly, but I'm learning because Rebecca loves to play board games. I'm a proud uncle of 3 beautiful children, a niece and 2 nephews. I love music and just being around family and friends. And one day I want to go skydiving. And one day I would like to run a marathon. And one day I want to learn how to drive a stick shift. Anybody drive a stick? Yeah. All right, great. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of you. I know. I wanted to say something to you yesterday, Olivia. I was like, that's impressive. Yes, it is unusual to learn how to drive a stick shift nowadays. So that's about me. That's me.
Oh, okay.
Next question.
I have a question for you, Rabbi.
And then there's a few more here also.
I'll let other people ask first.
Rabbi Fassman.
I just wanted you to speak a little bit about your feeling about Israel.
Sure. I'm a fan overall. I'm itching to get back to Israel. That's true. Rebecca and I met in Israel. Israel's been a really important part of my life. Israel's also a really complicated part of Jewish life. There's division, like anything. I love Israel, and I love walking around Israel with a Tanakh in my hand, with the Bible in my hand, and saying, oh, that happened here. That's very cool. And I love getting to know people and getting lost in Jerusalem and eating my way through Israel. As I said to someone during lunch, Jerusalem is really the melting pot of the world as far as cultures and communities and diversity. At the same time, I said Israel is a complicated place. There's this image that I know of a teacher of mine who has a beautiful picture of Jerusalem in her home. Yerushalayim shel mala, Jerusalem on high, and Yerushalayim shel mata, Yerushalayim on low, below, whatever you want to translate it as. And when you look at the picture of Jerusalem on top, you see this beautiful, picturesque country, city, identity, people, etc. But then when you look underneath, you see somewhat of a reflection, but also something very different. We all have this expectation that Israel is this one thing, but the reality is it's not true. And what I find to be the most important part about Israel, educationally, advocacy-wise, whatever it might be, is that we listen and understand that there are diverse narratives. And I believe that it is important. You don't have to agree with one side or another, but you have to be able to see and have a conversation to see the diversity that is the country, the people, the place, and whatnot. So I love Israel. I am frustrated by it. And it is hard to be a pluralistic, egalitarian, conservative Jew in Israel. And I would love that to change. I don't know that it's going to happen in my lifetime, unfortunately, but I want to work towards getting to that place. But Israel is a very important place as a country, as a people, as a history for me as well.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Steve Levine. I'm going to ask a question that's a little bit different. First of all, while my name's Steve, I like to be called Thor the Great and Powerful, and I'd like you to call me that. Thank you. I'm kidding. So I'm going to take this just on a business acumen for a moment.
Okay.
This is a question on politics, but on business acumen, business politics. You can't please everyone. We have a synagogue of 800 plus families, give or take 1,900 to 2,000 members. There's going to be a contradiction of opinions. You're being ordained in May, you said. Could you describe a situation in your life when you've had to seriously negotiate against contradicting opinions and how you would navigate various opinions throughout this synagogue community? Thank you.
There is never a point that I can imagine where I, as a rabbi, have to do something alone. As an assistant, there's always someone to report to and work with. There's also colleagues. So I think it should be said that I will never have to do something by myself, that I could always ask for, what would you do in this situation? Or how have you dealt with this particular thing in the past? So I just want to be very clear that I'm not doing this job alone. So I will always be able to ask for help and am happy to ask for help, number one. Number two, a specific example. My first Yom Kippur in my internship that I'm finishing my second year at in California. It was Yom Kippur, we were in Musaf, and we were going to be doing, this is COVID, by the way, first COVID, high holidays, and we were going to be doing the martyrology service. And there was this beautiful passage that was going around in the clergy world that used the frame of martyrology through the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I collaborated with a few other rabbinic colleagues, my brother included, who's a rabbi, and I shared this beautiful piece that someone wrote. And later a congregant came up to me and said, "Rabbi, you might have noticed that I walked out on you during the middle of services." And I said, I didn't, but thank you for telling me. Because I was, doing services during the middle of shul. And I said to him, I would love to talk about this. I would love to hear from you what led you to do what you did. But I need to be after Yom Kippur, because I can't do it. I still have Mincha and the Ila, and I got to get through the rest of the day. I'm fasting, you're fasting. We got to make sure that we're in good space to do so. He said, fine. I said, let's find a time between now and Sukkot, while it's still fresh in both of our minds, and have this conversation. So we did. And I listened. And this person told me that there's no place in the Bima for politics. There's no place in the Bima for current events such as the Black Lives Matter movement. And that all of the students who come out of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, of which you have at least 3 in this room, all think the same. They all have the same views, the same conversations, the same ideas, and they're all different than mine, and that's not the way that it should be. And I said, okay, thank you for telling me this. I hear you. I'm sorry that you feel this way. And then I said something that at the time, I was like, this is what I need to say because I want to share my opinion. And I said, what I hear you saying is that every rabbi, you dislike them because they are not like you. And you want every single rabbi to have the same opinions that you do. And I said that that's a really hard thing for any spiritual leader to be. Because our job as a rabbi, more than anything, is Ohev Shalom, a lover of peace, Rodef Shalom, a pursuer of peace, Ohevet Habriot, one who loves humanity and creation, Umekarvan LaTorah, and who brings Torah close to everybody. And I can't be the same thing as Rabbi Fassman, and I can't be the same thing as Rabbi Dahlin, I can't be the same person as Rabbi Grunwald. And our job is purposefully to be able to provide different ways of thinking. And I'm sorry that you don't like the way of thinking, and that's fine, and I respect you for that. But I need you to hear it from me too. And that's one example of a conflict. And I later said this to my rabbinic mentor, because everything that I do, I go back to share with him. And he said to me, "Did you really say that?" I said, "I did. I felt like I was being attacked. I felt like I was being put into a corner and being bullied." He said to me, "I would not have said it any other way." Because sometimes we as spiritual leaders, while we are representing the community, we are also human beings. And that's important that we remember who we are at our inner cores. So there will be many more opportunities where someone will disagree. And that's fine. It's great, actually. It's good to have machloket. It's good to have difference in argument. But it has to be respectful. And so I want to make sure that people do that respectfully. And if they want to come at me hot and heavy, then I might say, you know what, I want to listen to what you have to say, but I want you to be in a place where you can do it respectfully. Be mensch about it. And until you're ready to get to that point, I don't want to engage. And that might backfire on me, and that's when I would go speak to a rabbinic mentor or a partner about that. But that's part of learning and part of life. So that's a long way of saying it's going to happen, and it's a long way of saying when it happens, figure it out. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Who's next?
Somebody else have a hand up?
That's a good question. Yeah, right here.
And has married someone who is not Jewish or a girlfriend. I just wanted to get your opinion about this topic because it concerns me as a member of the Jewish community, that I see Jewish households not being formed, and the situation exists extensively in my opinion.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand your question. You want to know my thoughts on the intermarriage, on the concept of intermarriage, and why young Jewish people in particular are not marrying within the tribe.
Well, basically, I believe that that's what they are doing, and my feeling is that how, if at all, do we deal with it as a Jewish community to encourage Jews to marry Jews? Basically, based on my own family, extended.
Sure. It's the question of the century right now, amongst many others. But that is one of the questions that will be, I think, front and center to my rabbinate. I actually had this conversation with Rabbi Dahlin yesterday. We understood that each generation of the rabbinate has their ticket item, right? And who knows what, by the way, the next one will be. If only we could anticipate it, so maybe we could get ahead of it, but we don't know what it's going to be. So here's what I have to say about intermarriage. It is something that is real, and it is something that I don't think is going to go away. Okay? However, it doesn't mean that these people are bad. It doesn't mean that we treat them any differently. Okay? that I think needs to be said from the outset. There's no reason I can't love somebody who's in an intermarried family. And I'm sure if we were to take a poll of your community, we will find that there are people who are intermarried. And I imagine that we still love those people and invite them in and still consider them to be a part of the community. And I think that that's really important. And I think there's a challenge for us as rabbis to be able to create intentional community, an inclusive community with that population. Because you never know the whole story as to why someone decides not to marry Jewish, or why someone decides not to convert. And I think that part of what my job as a rabbi is to get to know people's stories. There might be a real reason, and we may not agree with that reason, but I can't force somebody to become Jewish, and nor can I say, I won't respect you because you won't become Jewish. That's what led to the destructions of the temples. That's called sinat chinam, baseless hatred. I can't not love somebody because they are not Jewish. I'm part and will be part of a mixed family, right? My soon-to-be in-laws and that side of the family, Rebecca converted when she was in college, and her mother is not Jewish. By the way, she loves what both of us do, and she's probably watching this. Maybe not, but she'll watch later. And her family is not Jewish, and they love me for who I am and for Rebecca for who we are together and what we do. And I think that that needs to be clear and stated and acknowledged. And it's a case-by-case basis. So similarly, I don't have a good answer for you, but there's no reason why I can't love them and support them and be active in their lives. And I think that in the next, 10, 15 years, this movement, of the conservative movement in particular, is going to be making some real progress into the conversation about how do we create real intentional rituals for intermarried community, but also still being sensitive to the fact that there are people who don't want to convert and people who don't want to be Jewish. So it's a case-by-case basis. I don't have a great answer. I want to get to know them. I want to show them that I can still love them and that they're still created in the image of God and that they have a place and that they can feel at home. So, thank you for asking.
I'll ask a question.
Okay, Rabbi Grunwald, please.
So I was actually really interested in one of the questions that you asked on your source sheet.
Okay.
How can you let yourself be guided by the broken vessels in your of your life? And I wonder if you might share with us what you've learned from the broken vessels in your life.
What have I learned from the broken vessels in my life? Number one, we all have them. And I think that's important. I worked for a summer at Beit Tshuva. It's a Jewish rehab and addiction center in Los Angeles. It does amazing work. And I learned firsthand what addiction meant. Addiction doesn't just mean that you have a substance abuse problem or a gambling problem or alcohol or any of the other things that people might go to rehab for. We all have inside of us our own addictions. And we all have inside of us our brokenness. We as a people, by nature, are broken. Go back to the beginning of the Bible, story of Adam and Eve. There's brokenness there, temptation leading to sin. Go to the story of Noah and the flood. The world was filled with Hamas, with craziness, with violence. Right? We all have brokenness inside of us. What I've learned about my inner brokenness is that I need to name it and be aware that it is my brokenness. And I need to always be sensitive to other people's brokennesses that I don't know. Some of them we wear on our body and we can see them. Some of them are very closed, tight inside of us, and that's called trauma. And we all have that. So what I've learned about my own personal brokenness is that number one, I have them and that I can name them. Number two, other people have them. And number three, there's nothing wrong with having brokenness. I think it's okay. I think as a human being, it's okay to have a flaw. I'm not perfect. I really hope you can see that I'm not perfect. Some of these answers might not be satisfying to you. I'm still learning. That's life. And we all try to work towards shleimut, to this wholeness. And that means something different for everybody. So that's what I learned about brokenness. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Elena Vita.
Sorry, say your first name again?
Elena.
Elena, thank you.
I was wondering if you're involved in any Israel advocacy groups, like APAC or J Street or any of those. I don't know how many others out there, but any of those?
Yeah, sure. I was a APAC LaFell student fellow. It's a rabbinical school fellowship through APAC, sponsored by the LaFell family out of New York. I did the first cohort of rabbinical students on the West Coast with the Shalom Hartman Institute. So I was a Hartman Fellow for, I think it was a year or 18 months, I forget what it was. I also have a master's concentration certificate in Israel education from the I Center based in Chicago. I spent a lot of summers with USY Israel Pilgrimage and 2 years on Nativ, the gap year program, both when I was a participant and then when I was a madrich, a counselor for the program. So a lot of Israel advocacy work and experiences, yeah. Always looking for a good trip to go to Israel. I mean, I don't know who isn't, but you know. Yes. Have I done summer camping? Yeah, I went to Camp Sabra on the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri for 8 summers from, I think, 1999 to 2006. I spent the inaugural 2 summers at Camp Ramah in Northern California as their program director, and then went back this past summer to do a little bit of everything, including get engaged. That was the claim to fame there. And then I spent 10 days in Siberia, it's a real place, in Vladivostok, Russia, for 10 days doing a B'nai Mitzvah summer camp for middle school, high school, college, and adults through the Joint Distribution Committee. Rabbi Grunwald also did the program when he was a rabbinical student too. So I like camp a lot. Camp is great. Big fan. So my mom went to ranch camp out here, JC ranch camp. My middle brother went to ranch camp out here also. So there's the Colorado camp connection. What would you like to know? Okay, my family, really quickly. I was born and raised in Kansas City, so just the peanut gallery in the back, Laura Terry, which is about 8.5, 9-hour, pretty boring drive east of here on I-70. I have 2 older brothers. One is a rabbi on the East Coast, and the other works for a joint partnership between the Jewish Federation and the JCC of Kansas City doing Jewish enrichment programming. My parents are still in Kansas City. My father's an attorney, and my mother is, I don't know what I call it. She's the guru at Bed Bath & Beyond. That's where she works. Does bridal and registry and whatnot. And 3 nieces and nephews. And 3 nieces and nephews. And yeah, that's my family for now. I grew up at Congregation Beth Shalom in Kansas City, spent time there up until my bar mitzvah. After my bar mitzvah, I spent some time at Ohev Shalom, the smaller of the 2 conservative synagogues, and went back to Beth Shalom during my first couple years of rabbinical school to be the rabbinic intern there for the high holidays and a couple of times throughout the year. So I grew up a shul kid, very much knew the ins and outs of shul, so for the shul kids here, you know what I'm talking about. Anybody else?
I was
yes.
oh.
Yeah. Go ahead. No. Thinking about 10 years from now, how are things integrated? What's different? Is the vision for the future? Yeah. Okay. Number 1. That there's still a committed core of people on Shabbat, during the week, volunteering, that there is a lovely gaggle of children running around, singing, dancing, playing, being kids, and are welcomed as children. They don't have to just be isolated in a cry room, right? That they can really be in shul. This is a place that opens their hands to anybody who needs and provides for them. And this is a place that puts learning at its forefront. And that's not just Jewish learning, that's life learning. This is a place where young people can come and spend time together to grow, whether it's through a preschool or religious school, that they can build their own community as their children are building their community. It's also a place that's innovating, that has many service options of which people can experience. And maybe not every week, but frequently enough that people can have their fill, that their neshamas can be satisfied. And I think most importantly, a kiddush that people will sit and schmooze for hours. And by the time they look at their watch, they're like, oh my God, it's almost Havdalah. We might as well just stay and make Havdalah together, right? A Beit Knesset is really a house of gathering. And this is what a synagogue is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a safe space for people to be able to gather, to feel welcome and loved and warm and at home. So take off your shoes, sit back and relax and enjoy. And I think that the challenge is going to be, how do you keep that going? And we've seen a lot of warmth this weekend. It's cold outside, but the warmth inside is really felt. And then the last thing I will say is that we see people our age here. And I think they'll come. People our age, which I imagine is a question that people think about, how do we get the young people in the shul? People our age will come. They may not come until they need something, and we have to be okay with that. Whether it's a preschool or religious school, b'nai mitzvah, etc. But once they're here, we gotta make sure that they're here. And I imagine a lot of what I would do as a rabbi in my first 5, 7, 10 years is a lot of work outside the walls of the synagogue, building that community, building connections, getting to know people, their stories. You're interested in, you love curling? Well, this person loves curling. Why don't you start a HEA curling team? I don't know why I thought of that. This person loves composting in the environment, so let's create a synagogue compost or something like that. Right? It's finding liked interest people to be able to build the community, old, young, and everything in between. So, it's a beautiful space, and I can only get, more beautiful and more welcoming and inclusive. So, it's fun work ahead of us. Yes, sir.
So we're basically reaffiliating with
Excuse me.
United Synagogue. And we, of which we are working to reaffiliate our youth program with Far West USY. And we, so how do you envision our reemergence or resurgence, or not resurgence, reimmersiveness into USY affiliated with the United Synagogue in the Far West region?
So how do we create the youth group and rebuild it? I was a USYer not too far from here, and I remember coming to Denver, Mile High USY, once upon a time. When your brother was the chapter president, yeah. We had our senior year keynotes here. I slept on the couch in the house. And I think the answer to the question is actually not starting with the older grades. I think the answer is actually starting with the younger grades. To pull the high schooler who's already pretty invested in the things that they're doing and is committed to those things is going to be really challenging. I think it actually starts with the middle schoolers in particular, like that sweet spot of b'nai mitzvah kids. It's to get them involved with like Kadima and to then build that core from the ground up as opposed from the top down. So I think that that's the best way to start. And that's working with a talented youth professional and with amazing people in the community who have skills that we may not know about. Again, building relationships with these people, finding what people are interested in, and offering those things. I am a big believer of quality over quantity. I'd rather have 3 quality experiences over the course of 6 months than 12 subpar, activities or programs or gatherings. So I think it requires quality, and I think it requires not setting the expectation with the older kids as the priority, although they're important, and we can find spaces and places and things for them to do, but to really build that base from the ground up, grow from the ground up. So.
Thank you, Rabbi Helfand. I think we're going to take our last question.
Okay.
I think we've had a really wonderful Q&A with you, and I'm going to give it to Steve now.
Sorry, I'm asking one more question. Thank you, and it's actually not for you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Rebecca, I just would like to know a little bit about you. What do you do for a living? Tell us a little bit about you, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Really, I'm only here because of her.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm Rebecca, David's fiance. So I grew up in Eastern North Carolina. Like David said, I converted to Judaism in college. I had a lot of Jewish influence growing up. It's a long story. Happy to share that at another time. But really felt a home in Judaism and moved to Chicago after college, got involved in the young professional Jewish community there. I studied engineering and I worked in manufacturing for 5 years. After about 5 years, I was like, well, life's going really fast, and I want to build a stronger foundation in Judaism. So I took a sabbatical leave from work and went to Israel. Happened to meet David there. To my chagrin, everyone said, you're going to go to Israel, you're going to meet a nice Jewish boy. I said, no, I'm going for myself, I'm going for my own learning, but, can't avoid it. So now, these days, I work remotely. I work in sustainability and manufacturing. Sustainability is a very big passion of mine. I love gardening. It's a little bit hard in our apartment, but David supports the compost efforts we have in LA very, very nicely. And very happy to be here, and thank you everyone for being so welcoming this weekend.
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful place for us to conclude. And please keep your questions coming. You're welcome to forward any questions to me and I can pass them along. Or, of course, fill out the survey after Shabbat. You have until Tuesday to respond. And am I forgetting anything else? No? Okay. Well, we want to wish Rabbi Helfand and Rebecca well on this weekend and in the journey ahead. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Have a good afternoon.